Picture yourself standing at the edge of your own potential, held back not by lack of ability, but by the invisible chains of self-doubt. This is where countless brilliant minds remain trapped, never realizing that the only thing separating them from greatness is the courage to believe in themselves. What you're about to hear is a story that reveals how one young man discovered that self-confidence isn't something you're born with, it's something you build, one brave step at a time. In a modest neighborhood of a sprawling city, there lived a salt merchant who worked tirelessly to provide for his wife and 2 sons. His younger son was naturally outgoing, charming customers with ease and handling the business with remarkable confidence. But his elder son was different. He was quiet, almost invisible in a crowd, his voice barely rising above a whisper when forced to speak. The boy's silence was often mistaken for simplicity, and people in the marketplace would take advantage of his gentle, non-confrontational nature. He would hand over extra salt without charging, accept less money than owed, and never question anyone's intentions. His father watched this with growing frustration, believing his eldest son was weak and foolish. The harsh words came frequently. "Why can't you be strong like your brother? Why do you let people walk all over you? You're useless in this business." Each criticism landed like a stone on the boy's heart, crushing whatever small confidence might have been trying to grow. As the years passed, this lack of self-belief began seeping into every corner of the young man's life. When exam time came at school, he would freeze. His mind knew the answers, but his hand trembled too much to write them down. The fear of being wrong, of disappointing others, paralyzed him completely. His grades suffered, and eventually he stopped attending school altogether. His father, seeing no other option, demanded that his son work full-time in the family shop. The young man agreed, desperate to prove his worth, but his anxiety made everything worse. He fumbled with measurements, couldn't look customers in the eye, and his nervous energy drove business away. His father's anger grew with each mistake, and the young man felt himself shrinking smaller and smaller, disappearing into his own shame. Then came the day that changed everything. His father had gone to the next town to purchase supplies, leaving the eldest son in charge of the shop for the first time. That afternoon, 3 well-dressed men entered, speaking with authority and confidence. "Your father sent us," they announced smoothly. "There's a large order for the municipal office. We're here to collect all the salt stock immediately." The young man's heart began racing. Something felt wrong, but who was he to question these confident men? What if they were telling the truth, and he embarrassed himself by doubting them? What if his father had arranged this, and he ruined everything by hesitating? Paralyzed by indecision and consumed by self-doubt, he stood silently as they loaded every single sack of salt onto their cart and disappeared down the street. When his father returned that evening to find the shop completely empty, his fury was volcanic. "You've destroyed me. Everything I built, gone because of your stupidity. I have no son like you. Get out of my sight and never return." The words weren't just angry, they were final, like a door slamming shut forever. Walking through the darkening streets, the young man felt as though he was carrying the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. Every failure, every disappointed look, every harsh word replayed in his mind like a cruel chorus. He found himself at the riverbank, staring into the dark water below. The thought came quietly at first, then louder. "I'm worthless. I ruin everything I touch. The world would be better without me." Just as he prepared to step forward into the void, a firm hand gripped his wrist and yanked him backward. An elderly man with kind eyes stood beside him, breathing heavily from the effort. "Why did you stop me?" the young man cried out, tears streaming down his face. "My life has no meaning. I can't do anything right. I'm a burden to everyone who knows me." The old man studied him carefully before speaking. "My child, this precious life you're ready to throw away, you only get one. Every problem has a solution if you're alive to find it. But if you end your life now, you'll never know what you could have become." The young man shook his head bitterly. "You don't understand. I'm shy, I'm weak, I have no education, and even my own father despises me. What kind of future exists for someone like me?" The old man's expression grew serious and determined. "Come with me," he said simply, and began walking without waiting for an answer. The young man, having nothing left to lose, followed him through winding streets to a small, humble house. Inside, the old man made tea and sat across from him. "I can help you find what you're looking for, but you must trust me completely. For the next 3 days, you will do exactly as I instruct, without question or hesitation. If you complete these 3 tasks, I promise you'll understand the secret that separates confident people from those who live in fear." Something in the old man's certainty gave the young man a tiny flicker of hope, and he agreed. The next morning, the old man gave him the first challenge. "Today, you will approach 10 complete strangers. You will ask them about their lives, their work, their dreams, and you will write down what they tell you." The young man's stomach knotted with fear. "I can't talk to strangers. I can barely speak to people I know." But the old man was insistent. "This is the task. Begin now." With legs feeling like lead, the young man stepped outside. The first person he approached walked past without acknowledging him. The second person brushed him off rudely, but he kept going. By the third person, his voice was slightly steadier. By the fifth, he was actually listening to their responses instead of drowning in his own anxiety. By the 10th conversation, something remarkable happened. He realized he had not only completed the task, but he'd actually enjoyed some of these exchanges. He'd made 2 people smile, learned fascinating things about strangers' lives, and discovered that most people weren't judging him nearly as harshly as he judged himself. That night, he felt something unfamiliar, a small sense of pride. On the second day, the challenge seemed impossible. "Today, you will gather 10 children and teach them about the importance of drinking water." The young man panicked. "I'm not educated. I can't teach anyone anything. They'll laugh at me." The old man smiled gently. "They don't know what you don't know. Share what you do know, and that will be enough." With trembling hands, the young man gathered some neighborhood children. Standing before them with a simple glass of water, his voice shook as he explained his first point about hydration. The children listened. He continued with a second benefit, then a third. By the 5th point, he noticed his voice had steadied. The children were asking questions, genuinely interested. When he finished, they actually thanked him. Walking back to the old man's house, he felt something shifting inside himself. The fear was still there, but it was smaller now, more manageable. On the 3rd day, the old man presented the final and most terrifying challenge. "Now you must return to your father's house. You must look him in the eye, apologize sincerely, and ask for one more chance." The young man went pale. "No, I can't. He told me never to come back. He hates me. This will only make things worse." The old man's voice was firm, but compassionate. "If you don't do this, you cannot receive my final teaching. This is the most important step." Gathering every ounce of courage he'd built over the past 2 days, the young man walked to his family home. His hands were shaking, his heart pounding so loudly he could hear it in his ears. He knocked on the door. When his father opened it, surprise and anger flashed across his face. But before his father could speak, the young man did something he'd never done before. He stood straight, looked his father in the eye, and spoke clearly. "Father, I failed you. and I'm deeply sorry. I let fear control me, and it cost you everything. But I'm changing. I'm learning to be stronger. Please, give me one more chance to prove myself." Something in his son's posture, in the steadiness of his voice, made the father pause. He saw something different in his son's eyes, something that hadn't been there before. After a long silence, he nodded slowly. "One chance. Don't waste it." The young man rushed back to the old man's house, breathless with relief and accomplishment. "I did it. I completed all 3 tasks. Now please, tell me the secret to becoming confident and successful." The old man's eyes twinkled with warmth as he smiled. "My child, you've already discovered the secret. You lived it these past 3 days. Your enemy was never your shyness or lack of education. Your enemy was fear and the belief that you were incapable. Confidence isn't something magical that some people have and others don't. It's built through action, through doing the things that frighten you until they frighten you less. Each time you face your fear and survive, you become stronger. The world treats you the way you present yourself. When you walked with your head down, people saw weakness. But when you stood tall and spoke clearly, even your father saw you differently. Self-belief isn't about never feeling afraid. It's about acting despite the fear." Tears filled the young man's eyes as understanding washed over him. Years passed, and that once timid boy transformed into a successful merchant, respected throughout the city, not just for his business acumen, but for his quiet strength and unshakable confidence. People who knew his father's business from the old days couldn't believe this was the same shy young man who used to hide behind the counter. He trained his own employees with patience and kindness, always remembering what it felt like to be paralyzed by self-doubt. And whenever he encountered someone struggling with confidence, he would share his story and the wisdom of the old man who saved his life that day by the river. The lesson here is profound and life-changing. Self-confidence is not a genetic gift bestowed upon the lucky few. It's a skill developed through consistent action in the face of fear. Every single person you admire for their confidence once felt afraid, once doubted themselves, once wanted to hide. The difference is, they chose to act anyway. They took small, uncomfortable steps outside their comfort zone, and with each step, they built the muscle of self-belief. You are not defined by your shyness, your past failures, or the harsh words others have spoken over you. You are defined by what you choose to do next. Start small. Speak to one stranger. Share one idea. Take one brave action today that your fearful self would have avoided yesterday. Watch how the world begins to shift around you, not because the world changed, but because you did. Believe in yourself, not because you're perfect, but because you're worthy of your own belief. Your confidence is waiting for you on the other side of your fear. Go find it.